Okay, scuba fans, get ready. We're going deep, deep down into the world of scuba diving, and let me tell you, it's going to be intense. You know, it's funny, I always just thought it was, well, scuba diving. But your notes make it seem like there are all kinds of ways to experience the underwater world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not one size fits all, that's for sure. It can be as peaceful or as extreme as you want it to be. I even saw some stuff about cave diving.
Cave diving, wow. Maybe someday. But first, let's back up a bit.
Sure.
What I find really interesting is that there are so many different types of scuba diving. It's not all just coral reefs, right?
Oh, definitely not. You've got wreck diving, where you basically become an underwater detective exploring old shipwrecks. And then there's ice diving talk about an adrenaline rush.
Hold on, ice diving, as in diving under ice. That sounds kind of scary, but also really cool. What kind of person decides to jump into freezing water?
It's not for everyone. And that brings up a really important point. Not everyone is cut out for every type of diving. Before you even think about getting wet, you have to think about the who of diving, not just the how.
So let's talk about those prerequisites. Let's say someone's listening to this and they're hooked. What do they need to even think about becoming a scuba diver?
Well, you don't have to be an Olympic swimmer or anything, but you need to be comfortable in the water, like really comfortable. Your guide says that basic swimming skills are a must.
That makes sense. How about age? Is this something you can do at any age?
There are age limits for sure. Most of the certification agencies, they have a minimum age, usually around 10 years old for junior certifications. And, well, there's no upper age limit as long as you're in good health.
So no pressure for those 80-year-old aspiring scuba divers out there. But speaking of health, are there any medical things people should keep in mind?
Absolutely. Safety comes first. Certain conditions, like if you have asthma or heart problems, you'll need to be really careful and get checked out by a doctor. It's always best to be safe than sorry.
For sure. Better safe than sorry, especially when you're underwater. So let's say our listener is cleared by their doctor. What's the next step in their scuba journey?
Certification, of course. These agencies are kind of like the guardians of scuba diving. They make sure that divers meet certain standards to be safe.
I see you've got PADI and NAUI. What's with all these different acronyms?
Think of them like different schools for scuba diving. PADI, which stands for the Professional Association of Diving Instructors, is the biggest and most well-known. But there are other good ones too, like NAUI, SSI, and others. They all offer different courses and certifications, but for beginners, the open water diver certification is the most important. It's like getting your driver's license, but for the underwater world.
Okay, now I'm interested. What exactly does this open water diver course involve? Is it like a scuba boot camp?
It's tough, but in a good way. You'll learn all the essential skills, like how to communicate underwater using hand signals. You'll learn how to use all that scuba equipment safely. And, probably most importantly, how to handle emergencies if something goes wrong.
Wow. It's like learning a whole new language and a whole new set of skills, all while underwater. I bet there's a lot of hands-on training involved.
You're right about that. Your open water course will usually include a mix of classroom sessions, pool dives to practice those essential skills we talked about, and finally you get to do open water dives with an instructor.
So it's a step-by-step process, from the classroom to the pool to the open ocean. I like that. But we talked about the training. What about the gear? I'm picturing flippers, masks. Am I on the right track?
You're getting there, but there's a lot more to it than that. Picking out your gear is exciting, but it's not just about looking the part. It's about each piece keeping you safe and having the best experience down there.
Right. So let's start with the basics. What are we talking about here? Like, what's in the scuba starter pack?
Okay, well, first, you've got your absolute essentials. The mask so you can actually see underwater, the snorkel for when you're at the surface, and of course those classic fins to get you moving.
Yeah, okay, those I get. But then things start to get a little more, I don't know, complicated. Your notes mention something called a BCD, which, and I'm just going to guess here, does not stand for breakfast, coffee, diving.
Right, definitely not. BCD stands for Buoyancy Control Device. It's a super important piece of gear, kind of like your own personal buoyancy manager. It's a vest that you can inflate or deflate to control how deep you go. That's what gives you that awesome feeling of weightlessness, like when you see those videos of people just floating over a coral reef.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And probably a lot safer than those weights I've seen old-timey divers using.
Way safer. And speaking of safety, the regulator is key. This is what connects to your air tank and makes sure you're getting the right air pressure to breathe underwater.
So the regulator is basically our underwater lifeline.
Exactly. And usually you'll also have a backup air source attached to the regulator called an octopus. It's there just in case you need it, either you or your dive buddy.
Okay, this is getting serious, and I'm guessing this is where the dive computer comes in.
Yeah.
To make sure we're diving within safe limits.
You got it. Think of the dive computer as your underwater co-pilot. It keeps track of all the important stuff. How deep you are, how long you've been down there, how much air you have left, even how quickly you're going up. No more guesswork. You can just relax and enjoy the dive.
Sign me up for a dive computer, please.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we've got buoyancy, breathing, depth. What about staying warm? Are we talking like full-on Speedo situation, or is there something a bit more insulating?
Unless you're diving in the tropics, you're going to want a wetsuit. They come in different thicknesses depending on how cold the water is. And if you're doing some crazy cold dives, like the ice diving we talked about earlier, you might even need a dry suit to keep you completely dry.
Noted. No Speedos in the Arctic. Okay, so wetsuit, BCD, regulator dot anything else. I feel like we're forgetting something crucial. Oh.
Can't forget about the air supply. You'll need a scuba tank filled with, you guessed it, air. Though your research also mentioned nitrox, too.
Right. Nitrox. That sounds intense, like something race car drivers use.
Huh, not quite that intense, but it's pretty cool. It's a special air mix with more oxygen than regular air. You can stay underwater longer at certain depths with it, which recommends it for more experienced divers.
Okay, so longer dives. Got it on the list for when I'm more experienced. We've got all this incredible gear, but knowing how to use it is just one piece of the puzzle, right? What about safety? This is the ocean we're talking about, not a swimming pool.
You're telling me safety is absolutely the most important thing in scuba diving? Your research really emphasizes those basic safety rules and what to do in an emergency.
All right, so before we even think about swimming with the fishes, what are the must-knows, the absolute essentials for staying safe down there?
Number one, and I can't stress this enough, never, ever, ever hold your breath while you're scuba diving. You're breathing compressed air, and holding your breath, especially when you're coming back up, can really hurt your lungs.
Got it. Breathe easy. What else?
Another crucial rule, ascend slowly, like really slowly. Your body needs time to get used to the pressure changes as you go up.
Okay, up slowly. Check. Anything else that might trip up a newbie?
Equalizing. When you're going down, the water pressure builds up and you can feel it in your ears. It's like that feeling you get in an airplane when it's taking off or landing.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I've totally felt that before. So how do you equalize when you're underwater?
A couple different ways, like pinching your nose and blowing gently or swallowing. It might feel weird at first, but you get used to it. Trust me, it's way better than the pain you'll feel if you don't equalize.
Duly noted. Equalize those ears. But what happens if, even though we're being super careful, something still goes wrong on a dive?
That's what those emergency procedures are for. You'll learn all about them in your open water course. Everything from what to do if your equipment acts up to what to do if you run out of air. And remember that dive buddy we talked about. They're not just there for the photo ops.
Right. The buddy system. Tell me more about that.
Diving with a buddy isn't just about safety. It's about sharing the experience. But yeah, practically speaking, your buddy is your backup down there. You're looking out for each other before and during the dive, communicating, and ready to help if something goes wrong.
It's like having a wingman or wingwoman down in the depths. Okay, so we've got the gear. We've got safety covered now for the fun part. Where are we diving?
Buckle up. First stop, coral reefs. They're like the underwater rainforests teeming with life.
I've seen pictures. The colors, the light. It's like a different world down there. Where do we even start?
Well, we can't talk about reefs without mentioning the big one, the granddaddy of them all, Australia's Great Barrier Reef. It's so huge you can actually see it from space. It's got something like over 1,500 different types of fish.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. With a reef that massive, where do you even begin to explore?
You know, that's the great thing about diving. Every dive site, even in the same reef, is unique. Your notes mention that the Great Barrier Reef has everything from shallow coral gardens perfect for beginners, all the way to deep drop-offs where you might spot sharks and rays.
Okay, I might not be ready for sharks just yet.
All right, so if sharks are your thing, and hey, once you're a pro, maybe they will be, the Red Sea has your name on it. It borders Egypt, and the visibility is amazing, over 100 feet. Plus, there are a ton of sharks, especially reef sharks.
Wow, now that's something you don't see every day. What makes the Red Sea such a popular spot for sharks?
A few things, actually. The water is warm and clear, and there's plenty of food, so that keeps the sharks happy. Plus, they've been working hard to protect sharks there, so the populations are doing well.
It's incredible how everything is connected. The environment, the marine life, even our own actions. Your research also mentioned the Mesoamerican reef system. How does it compare to the Great Barrier Reef?
Good question. It's not quite as large as the Great Barrier Reef, but it's still super impressive. It stretches over 600 miles along the coasts of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras. You can find whale sharks there.
Wow, whale sharks. Those are like the gentle giants of the ocean, right?
Exactly. And your guide even mentions some ancient Mayan ruins that are underwater. It's like a scuba diver's dream, history, and marine life all rolled into one.
Okay, now this is getting hard. Do I want to swim with whale sharks or explore ancient ruins? It's going to require some serious thought.
Tough choices. And hey, don't forget about the Blue Hole in Belize. This place is legendary. It's a huge sinkhole, goes down over 400 feet with incredible limestone formations. You have to see it to believe it.
This is all so amazing. But we're sharing these incredible places with all kinds of marine animals. How can we make sure we're not, messing things up for them? How can we be responsible divers?
That's so important, and your guide spends a lot of time on that topic, being a responsible diver. We're visitors in their world, and we have to respect that.
So that means no riding the sea turtles.
Definitely no riding the sea turtles. I know it's tempting to want to touch or play with the marine life, but we have to resist. Like they say, take only pictures, leave only bubbles.
I like that. And honestly, that's a good rule for life above the surface, too.
Hmm.
Besides the obvious, don't harass the wildlife, what else can we do to be responsible?
Buoyancy control is a big one, actually. If you're good at controlling your buoyancy, you can hover over the reef without touching anything or kicking up sand. That way, you don't harm the coral or disturb the fish. You also have to be careful with your fins. They can do some damage.
So it's like learning a whole new way of moving, of being in this underwater environment.
Exactly. And it's not just about how we interact with the animals, but also our impact on the environment as a whole. Simple things like not littering, avoiding anchoring on the reef, even wearing the right kind of sunscreen can make a difference.
It seems like becoming a responsible diver goes hand in hand with just being a more aware person in general. So we've talked reefs, but your research also mentioned some other really cool types of diving. Did someone say underwater Indiana Jones?
They might have. Wreck diving is a completely different experience. It's like taking a trip back in time. Imagine swimming through a sunken ship, seeing all these artifacts. There's a wreck off the coast of Florida, a Spanish galleon from the 1600s, that you can actually dive.
Okay, that is officially going on my scuba bucket list.
Right.
But wreck diving has to be for more advanced divers, right?
Absolutely. Wreck diving can be more challenging. You're often deeper, the visibility can be bad, and there are more hazards because, well, you're swimming around a shipwreck. It's crucial to get the right training before you even think about it.
Good to know. I'll stick to the beginner dives for now. But what about cave diving? That one still makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, cave diving is definitely not for everyone. It's considered a technical type of diving, which means you need special training, equipment, and I'd say a good dose of bravery.
What kind of training are we talking about?
Well, cave divers have to be masters of buoyancy control. Like, seriously good. One wrong move in a cave, and you could stir up all the silt and lose all visibility. It's also crucial to know how to navigate in a cave, often using guidelines to find their way back out.
I can see why it would be both thrilling and terrifying at the same time. It's like another world down there. But scuba diving doesn't always have to be about pushing boundaries. What about something a little more chill?
You're talking about drift diving. This is where you just go with the flow, literally. You let the current carry you along like you're on a lazy river. It's a great way to cover a lot of ground and see a different side of the reef.
That actually sounds perfect. So we've explored coral reefs, checked out shipwrecks, even ventured into underwater caves. What an incredible deep dive this has been. But what happens when our listeners come up for air? What if they're hooked and want to keep exploring?
Well, that's the thing about scuba diving. It often turns into a lifelong passion. Joining a local dive club is a game changer. It's all about connecting with people who love scuba diving just as much as you do, sharing stories, planning trips, even getting involved in ocean conservation.
That's awesome. It's like taking something you love and turning it into a way to meet people and make a difference.
Exactly. And there are always new things to learn. Maybe you want to try underwater photography or become a wreck diving pro or learn how to use more advanced equipment.
It really is a journey, isn't it? And it all starts with that first breath underwater.
It does. And to anyone listening who's ever felt that pull towards the ocean, remember this. There's a whole world down there waiting to be discovered. So take the plunge.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. As you dive deeper into the world of scuba diving, see what I did there? Think about what truly draws you to it. Is it the peacefulness, the excitement, or maybe even a desire to protect our oceans? The answer might surprise you. Until next time, happy diving.